Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first episode in the ongoing series on Shirley. This adaptation is based on the historical novel Shirley by Charlotte Brontë, first published in 1849. It was the era when the trumpets of the Napoleonic Wars sounded an alarm to the English crown. To retaliate and diminish the rising French supremacy over Europe, the English crown imposed trade restrictions on France and its allies. The result? The British textile industry, especially in Yorkshire, crippled and came to its last leg. Every day, a well-known name among industrialists sank into shame and obscurity. The remaining wealthy risked all their fortunes to preserve their honor and prevent further decline. The poor succumbed to working on pay cuts, or worse, facing job cuts altogether. But the situation hardly affected the lives of three young clergymen, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Malone, and Mr. Sweeting, who, hailing from neighboring parishes, considered each other bosom friends. Yet this friendship rarely bore any warmth. Their occasional gatherings were more for the purpose of mocking one another than anything else, always ending with a promise never to return. Promises that, as human conditions go, proved fragile. Thus, the cycle of jests and jibes continued. On one such visit, when the skirmish among the clergymen was nearing its peak, a thud was heard on the door. Old Reverend Helstone, the rector of Briarfield Parish, pushed the door open and entered. Like a walking thundercloud. He was a man for whom duty came before familial ties. Years ago, he had adopted his fatherless niece, Caroline Helstone. Not out of affection, but out of obligation. He was widely respected for this outward display of kindness and wisdom. That day too, it was duty that brought him to the three clergymen. He warned them of an imminent threat to Robert Moore, a rebellious textile mill owner, bent on modernizing his mill against the workers' will. That very night, Mr. Malone, who had more warrior tendencies than clerical ones, was sent to accompany Robert Moore, as his Hollows mill was to receive new labor-saving machinery. At the mill, however, things went haywire. When they discovered the machinery had been sabotaged by workers, Robert was disheartened, but not defeated. He resolved to bring the perpetrators to justice, and continued to place his faith in science to save costs. Later, he met Mr. York at the Briarmains mansion to seek counsel. Mr. York, a no-nonsense gentleman, held the lowly in the tenderest regard, and viewed the highly as often corrupt. Yet, to Robert, he was a trusted guide and spoke frankly, often calling out Robert's rebellious nature. They shook hands, and Robert departed, firm in his resolve. The next day, Caroline Helstone took light steps to Moore House for her usual French lessons from Robert's stern yet caring sister, Hortense. The siblings, originally from Belgium, had taken a liking to their distant English relative. Hortense felt it her duty to refine Caroline intellectually, to match her innocent and growing beauty. Her affection manifested in strict, old-fashioned lessons. Thankfully, Robert was present that day and accompanied Caroline. She managed to steal a few moments from her studies, to relish kindred conversations with him. He never once let the shadow of his mill troubles fall upon their time together. From then on, he partook in her studies during every visit. His eyes often cast glances of adoration, and her cheeks, disobediently, turned rosier and brighter. With each passing moment he looked her way. But this friendship came to a halt. Robert became increasingly preoccupied with saving his failing business and dealing with the angry workers. His few and far between visits made Caroline pine for his affection. It was in these lapses that she became aware of a budding love, one she believed could never be returned. Yet, She kept kindling that flame, finding comfort in secretly visiting a vantage point from where she could see Moor House. Her cheeks would regain their color each time Robert's shadow passed behind a curtain. Returning from one such visit, she stood near the gate of Field Head, a beautiful and modest old manor surrounded by greenery. That day, the manor was unusually lively and well lit from inside. Caroline fixed her eyes on its ancient structure and silently returned home. She lived at the rectory with her uncle, who usually left her to her own devices. But the following day, Uncle Helstone appeared cheerful and affectionately invited her to visit a new acquaintance who had arrived the previous night. Together, they paid a visit to Field Head. The cozy house was inhabited by the young heiress, Shirley Keeldar, a woman who thought like a man, but felt like a lady, and her companion, Miss Pryor. Miss Pryor had once served as Shirley's governess, and had since become her inseparable friend. Though few words escaped her parched lips, her silence hinted at deep, treasured wisdom. Miss Pryor took an instant liking to Caroline, though she offered no verbal praise. Shirley instantly befriended Uncle Helstone, and expressed curiosity about the calm, composed Caroline. Within days, a bond blossomed among the young women and Miss Pryor. They roamed together, stayed confined in conversation, and shared their fancies. Caroline soon learned that the land on which Hollow's Mill stood originally belonged to Shirley. Shirley's joy knew no bounds upon learning that Caroline was Robert Moor's cousin. With Shirley's counsel and investment, Robert regained his confidence. Though the business was down, they aimed to keep production high, so when the market revived, they would be ready to profit. Caroline could only meet Robert during discussions involving Shirley, Mr. York, or her uncle. She felt sidelined in the presence of all. Meanwhile, Shirley continued to endear herself to both the rich and poor alike. Her efforts to uplift the workers gained support from businesses, the clergy, and even elderly widows and spinsters. However, Shirley confided in Caroline that her initiatives were largely aimed at protecting Robert Moor's interests, so the workers would be appeased, and Hollow's Mill would be spared from vandalism. At times, Robert noticed something in Shirley's gaze, a look made of fire and air, which compelled admiration. Shirley was his sole beacon of hope and solace. To her, the mere mention of Robert's name could make her bloom like a flower, ready to be plucked, not by anyone, but by the object of her admiration. Yes, Shirley had the freedom to choose her master. Soon, whispers spread through town, predicting a union between Robert and the charming heiress. Caroline, convinced of their growing love, resigned herself to the belief that she had no place in Robert's future. Against the grace and power of Shirley Keeldar, she stood no chance. Often, during her countryside walks, Caroline would cross paths with the shadows of the tall, handsome Robert and the graceful, laughing Shirley. A marriage between them seemed inevitable. Caroline began to withdraw, stealing moments in the corner of the day to shed silent tears, though she remained attentive and lively in Shirley's presence. During this time, Shirley was invited to spend the night at the rectory by Uncle Helstone. That night, the girls opened up, for the first time, about Robert Moor. But a gunshot pierced the night. Gathering their courage, the girls rushed through the darkness to Hollow's Mill, fearing danger. They took the shortest path, hearts pounding, and reached the mill gates. Under the cloak of night,